So we will cut to that match for you right now between Fabrizio Anteri on Simic Ramp and Yuki Ichikawa on John Sacrifice. And Fabrizio, a lot of ramp, not much to do with it yet, but he has time to find that. And then for Ichikawa, again, you see Solemn Simulacrum and the younger, better Solemn Simulacrum. The more accomplished younger brother there, but not too much else going on for him at the moment.
And this is the textbook perfect opening for this ramp deck. Having Arboreal Grazer into Temple of Mystery, into Growth Spiral is just the dream.
Yeah, this is how you draw it up. And Grazer, often a high variance card in these ramp decks. You need to have those extra land drops to make. Fabrizio has those here, and this is the perfect ingredient that, if things break right, could lead to a turn 3 Nissa, or there it is.
Oh,
I manifested it, brought it into being. Turn 3 Nissa Who Shakes the World on cue here for Fabrizio, as long as he can find that 5th land, which he does.
And this is one of the scary things. Look how much mana Anteri has on the battlefield before Ichikawa gets to play his 2nd land. He can Aether Gust and ramp on turn 2 into a Nissa. This is unbelievable. This is... Whew.
Yeah, this is showcasing exactly what this ramp deck can do in this format. He's cast 2 ramp spells and an interactive spell is going to curve into a Nissa, and that's turn 3 on the play even. Just in case we needed an even bigger advantage here.
Right, this is Anteri planting his version of Simic Ramp. It's not an Ugin deck, but a Nissa deck. This is a deck that wants to bridge to this Planeswalker that can just run away with the game by herself.
Does it tell you anything that Fabrizio snapped off the Aether Gust on that train of crumbs? So from Ichikawa's side, is that going to play into top versus bottom here? Because it seems like Anteri doesn't have much left going on unless those 2 cards are pretty important.
Right, the idea here is that Anteri won't be able to use the Aether Gust next turn without something like a Breeding Pool off the top, and just being able to pick off a Trail of Crumbs early means that you actually get to lock in using the card and getting to interact with the sort of Rube Goldberg machine that Ichikawa is trying to build.
And there's no big payoff for all of this Nissa mana right here, but he may not need one. Turn 3 Nissa on the play, and yeah, we see it is nice, Yuki. That parade of 3/3 lands, that could win the game by itself.
Oh, and we just see a land coming off the top for Ichikawa here. He needs to make something happen ASAP.
Absolutely. So Mayhem Devil comes down on 3, but that's not a card you want to be trading off with a 3/3 land.
Right, we're quickly approaching the point where Ichikawa needs to just find something like Bolas' Citadel, like Corvold off the top of the library in order to just beat this endless stream of 3/3s.
And yeah, no copies of anything like Murderous Rider in the main deck for Ichikawa. So that Nissa is on the battlefield, and it is staying on the battlefield unless something truly dramatic happens.
Right, we might even just see something like a Solemn Simulacrum here to try and actually build towards having one of those powerful top decks.
Yeah, that Scavenging Ooze in a future turn, if it can grow to a 4/4 or bigger, can maybe help to stabilize things here. But even as it stands, Anteri is presenting a formidable offense just with these Nissa activations. He may not need to cast another spell in this game.
Right, just getting a 3/3 every single turn is a very real effect, and they're threatening to be indestructible 3/3s soon.
Now, granted, Anteri cast more spells in his first 3 turns than Yuki has cast in this entire game so far, so that shows you how that math plays out. But Joriel, a fantastic card in its own right, worth noting, excellent with Nissa Who Shakes the World, where you can activate your Joriel, and those lands have counters, and Joriel can alter their base power, and then the 3 counters will buff them up even further.
Right, and we saw Anteri choose not to put a land into play with Growth Spiral because of that Joriel coming off the top.
Yeah, you don't need to be making a parade of 3/3 cats when you can just activate your Joriel and crunch in for lethal.
Right, this is just an extra couple of points for free because Anteri chose not to play that forest and knows that isn't what the game is about.
Yeah, and I don't think the game is about Witch's Oven either. I think this game is about to end in Anteri's favor, and yeah, there it is. A quick game 1, showing you exactly how powerful these ramp decks can be. And if you want to read more about John Sacrifice, Simic Ramp, all of the other decks in the standard format, you can do that on SCG Premium. You can see there, starcitygames.com/join-premium for all the information there. Just $7.99 a month for all the best information and articles in Magic at the moment, as well various exclusive benefits, 5% off sealed products, 10% off singles, 15% off all of your gaming supplies. And as we look back at the sideboard, there are some very obvious inclusions for both players. I imagine those Noxious Grasp jumping right into Yuki Ichikawa's deck. More interesting to see what Fabrizio does with all of these various reactive cards available to him.
Yeah, a lot of what we're going to see from Fabrizio is things that are just trying to pick apart the important pieces of Ichikawa's strategy, the things that let him actually kind of go over the top of what this ramp deck is doing. That's why we saw that Aether Gust on that Trail of Crumbs so quickly last game. It's just Anteri really, really wanting to make sure that he can check those sorts of synergies before Ichikawa gets them online.
How do you feel about Agonizing Remorse from Ichikawa's side?
That's one that I'm a little bit lower on. I think most of this matchup is just a matter of trying to play to the battlefield rather than answering what the opponent has, especially since ramp decks fundamentally just try to develop a ton of lands onto the battlefield and then just almost feel like they're flipping coins to find a threat off the top of their library. So you can't Thoughtseize the top of their deck. Let's leave it in the sideboard.
Yeah, and this is interesting from Anteri. We see Will coming in to answer 1-drop artifacts and 6-drop artifacts alike, both ends of the curve, but also Nightbug Ambusher, de-emphasizing this Who Shakes the World, and Elder Gargaroth as his 5-drop, the bigger, better, greener Baneslayer Angel coming into play here for Anteri.
Right, just having ways to actually pressure Ichikawa's life total. I believe Anteri recognizes that he is the beatdown here. Bolas' Citadel is going to go over the top of even Ugin if Ichikawa gets to just rip it off the top of the library and go bananas with it. So Anteri needs to do things that put the game closer to over.
And Gilded Goose, a great pickup there for Ichikawa. Going to power out that turn 4 Corvold with Noxious Grasp to tag anything that comes up in the meantime.
Right, this is going to play so nicely into that Joel Rail that Anteri is looking to develop soon.
Absolutely, and failing that, if there's no good target presenting itself, he can always just make a food, and that's one of the perks of Gilded Goose. Great on turn 1, and as you can do.
Right, and just making that extra food is going to create a permanent that Corvold can eat without feeling bad about eating it. Normally, you don't want to sacrifice a land, a Gilded Goose, stunt your own development when you put this Corvold out ahead of schedule.
And the first of potentially many cultivates there from Anteri, but this is a window now for Yuki to land a turn 4 Corvold on the play. Currently, Anteri doesn't have the Aether Gust or anything to deal with that. The Elder Gargaroth does have reach, in case there was any doubt, but that Corvold is going to very quickly outsize it.
And so is Noxious Grasp, if you think about it. This is the real reason that we don't see a ton of these Baneslayer-esque cards in the format, is when the opponent has an answer that lines up well against it. It's so punishing.
Would you say Noxious Grasp is a Doomblade?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, why not? Yeah, but we see instead Anteri opting for Joriel, Interland, or Visionary, setting up for what could be, you see, there a game-breaking Ugin the Spirit Dragon if there's time. But we've seen with this John Sacrifice deck, you only need 1 or 2 turns with Corvold in play to finish things out.
Yeah, it really feels like we're about to just see Ichikawa kind of go bananas here.
Yeah, he's already attacking for at least 7 in this combat set. And picks up a Feast of Forgotten Gods, which, again, if you want some sacrifice triggers, that'll get them for you.
Right, now Ichikawa's weighing if he wants to go ahead and get an extra point of damage in by making a food, sacrificing it to bring back the cat, and so on. But is opting instead to just have more mana available on Anteri's turn.
Still thinking about that there, maybe it looks like. He may be thinking, he's doing the math, Anteri's at 12, he has a 7/7 Corvold. He can aim for lethal next turn if nothing untoward happens.
Right, at this point you're looking at things like Priest of the Forgotten Gods and trying to see if that is just going to be enough on its own, what you want to do to try and just pave the way for this Corvold, and so on.
And with how much mana both players have, I think Anteri is banking on being able to, set up an Elder Gargaroth into Ugin, the Gargaroth buying a turn. Noxious Grasp are going to take that turn away from him.
Right, this is the spot where Anteri needed to find something like an Aether Gust off the top to be able to withstand another attack from Corvold. As it stands, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, and this is a downside of going strict Simic, where you don't have access to these removal spells. Oh god, there is Aether Gust.
God.
It just exactly how Anteri drew it up. That's going to reset the Corvold, and Ugin the Spirit Dragon is going to come down and threaten to dominate this game.
That is exactly the card that he needed to find off the top of the library there.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Do you think that's going to prompt a nice emote from Ichikawa again?
Honestly, it's hard to say. There's a point where it feels like Ichikawa has been respecting it for the most part. Right, that's 3 speed, make an egg with the goose and so on, is paying some respect to the Gust.
And there's yet another Cultivate, finding more lands, setting up perfectly for that Ugin. And that Aether Gust, I guess we could call that a Doomblade, but it's tough to say.
Oh no, that card is not a Doomblade at all.
And
now
Ichikawa,
the infamous upkeep stop of do I either Gust now or...
You hate to see it if you're Ichikawa, who at this point really has nothing left going on. He's drawn 9 lands in this game. So, if he could follow up that Corvold with, a Bolus Citadel or something, then maybe we'd be telling a different story here. But he does not have much gas left in the tank.
Right, and this is a situation where it feels like Ichikawa may even want to just go ahead and fire off this priest activation, sacrificing the Corvold and the cat to go ahead and just draw a couple of cards.
Yeah, I guess if you think you can put the Corvold back on top and then use the priest to draw into it and then cast it, but then you don't have too much left over at that point. And we've seen the 10th land of the game drawn for Ichikawa, who, if he'd been casting Cultivates 3 turns in a row, that would make more sense. But as it is, it kept a hand that could grasp into Corvold and really has just found nothing since then.
Yeah, at this point, Ichikawa is kind of reaching that Bolus Citadel or bust territory. And doing this on upkeep is a big signal from Anteri that Anteri is okay with Ichikawa drawing Corvold again, and just wants to reduce the variables that Ichikawa has access to.
And I think Ichikawa knows exactly what that means, but not much he can do in this spot to play around it.
Right, it's one of the situations where you kind of just sigh and go, okay, and realize you are kind of just priced into taking your medicine.
And with the priest, he would have ways to redraw it anyway, but what else is Ichikawa going to do here? I guess he can play a Stomping Ground, or a Blood Crypt, or a Forest, or a Swamp, or another basic Swamp. This is his only route to victory.
Oh, interesting. So we're going to see a sacrifice of the Gilded Goose and the Cauldron Familiar with this Corvold trigger on the stack?
Or
trying to draw as many cards as possible? Oh,
yeah, I guess. That. Yeah, I guess you can just sacrifice a land first, and then maybe use that information to see what's up.
Right. And
Solemn Simulacrum, a great card to sacrifice to your priest or your Corvold if you have time, which is unclear if Ichikawa is going to have that here.
And it's hard not to imagine that Ugin isn't about to just come down and end this game on the spot.
Ugin can come down and speak the battlefield. That said, if Ichikawa can draw into, let's say, a Bolus Citadel to follow up with, because if that Ugin has to -5 to take out the Corvold, it's maybe a little vulnerable to stuff that Ichikawa can draw into.
Oh my god, okay, so think about this attack from Anteri. If Ichikawa just takes it, there's a not zero chance that Anteri could just activate Jol Rail and make it lethal in the following turn with Ugin.
Yeah, that lightning bolt from Ugin's plus mode really coming into play here. And Ichikawa is going to go through the motions and make his blocks, but we see how Jor-El can just turn the corner in these games so quickly.
Yeah, just the amount of pressure that card represents in both directions, the fact that it both plays on defense and offense, is colossal.
And there is the priest activation. So a card off the priest, 2 more cards off the Corvold triggers. So a lot of Ichikawa can draw a lot more cards. Hopefully some spells this time around, and can maybe piece something together to fight through the Ugin.
Well, there's a spell off the top.
I guess I should have been more specific here. I may have cursed him with that one.
Wow, Corval just turning that Cauldron Familiar and Gilded Goose into a Cauldron Familiar and a Gilded Goose.
There is a Witch's Oven.
Still a distillation of exactly what this deck does. I don't know what is.
Turns out Ugin also very good at cleaning up 1-drops. Gilded Goose and Cauldron Familiar alike. And there is the card that many people thought would completely redefine the standard format. Ugin the Spirit Dragon hasn't quite done that to the extent that people anticipated, but try telling someone that looking at this board state.
Wait, look at that Mayhem Devil off
Oh
the top.
dear lord.
That's enough to deal with the Ugin.
That's what I was referring to. This is exactly what he needs. And so this is where those 1-drops come in handy. Ichikawa can play the Goose and the Oven and the Cauldron Familiar, set up a whole flurry of Mayhem Devil triggers, shoot down the Ugin, and now have a board that Anteri needs to answer.
Right, this is a spot that Ichikawa now actually just kind of is in control of this game all over again.
I will see if Anteri can draw his second Ugin, I suppose.
Yeah, that's all Anteri really can do from this spot. He's facing lethal all over again.
And Grossbow as a redraw towards it, I suppose, but not going to have the mana left over after that. Ooh, Blast Zone, actually, a big
Blast
pickup.
Zone, absolutely wonderful. It is going to cost a life to activate, admittedly.
And the unfortunate thing here is that he can't both deploy the Gargoth and the Blast Zone on this turn, I believe. Or actually...
I think he's 1 mana short. I can't quite see how many forests are in that stack there.
Yeah, there's the Gargoth. So this is where these cards like Baneslayer Angel, like Elder Gargoth, can fall short sometimes, where, they can run away with the game by themselves, but in these board states, they don't really do too much to stabilize. Ichikawa has this whole engine going that can go around it, over the top of it, through it, however you want to frame it.
Right, now you might even see this Cauldron Familiar come back. Both Cauldron Familiars get to attack. Oh my.
Second Witch's Oven there. So I think, Emma, we can count to 7 on this turn.
Honestly, it's a good number to count to, and it's hard not to feel like Ichikawa isn't going to be forcing a game 3 in this absolute nail-biter of a match.
And Ichikawa just working through the sequencing here, double-checking the math, making sure he's got this on lockdown. But I think we're going to see a game 3 here very shortly.
Yep, just going through the motions, upstairs everything.
Sacrifice food, join you for 1, activate my Witch's Oven. And for virtually, we'll let him go through the motions there.
Yep, just min-maxing that clock use, which is totally understandable on an online client.
Also, just no minimizing him, maximizing his time on camera. And Jumpstart is a set that was coming out alongside Core Set 2021. If you want to pre-order your Jumpstart cards, poised to make a big impact in Legacy, Vintage, and Historic as well, if that's more your jam. You can pre-order that now at starcitygames.com/JMP. And now as we revisit sideboarding here, any changes that you think are likely to come from either player?
I think most of it is just going to stay the same. These players are ultimately trying to lean into power cards that allow them to run away with the game, and those cards haven't really changed based on the play-draw dynamic. Just because Ichikawa, so many of his cards are so mana efficient that play versus draw doesn't impact them a ton. And on the other side, Anteri is just trying to get ahead of a traditional curve with his ramp spells, and for the most part, and his sideboarding strategy isn't affecting that dynamic.
Agonizing Remorse, still on the bench there for Ichikawa, and that could have been excellent in that game, taking away the Ugin before it was able to sweep the board. But there will be other times where, they have 2 ramp spells and you can't take both of them, or 2 big payoffs and you can't take both of them, and you spend your turn and a card interacting with them in a way that doesn't really accomplish anything.
Right, and you can see Ichikawa deciding to opt for a single Agonizing Remorse, because you don't want to draw too many of them, right? If you ever draw 2-3 copies, you might just be short on your synergies. But with the lower number of payoff cards in Anteri's deck that can win a game by themselves, the impact of it could be huge.
And another fast start with Gilded Goose into Noxious Grasp, into Corvold here for Ichikawa. Facing off against a gross power hand for Anteri, but he's missing that third land, and he's going to need to find that to curve into that cultivate. The third oven, maybe not what the doctor ordered.
Well,
I guess what the witch ordered, or the whole party of witches. But until he finds a cat or some other sacrifice payoff, those are going to be not doing too much for him.
Right. Generally speaking, you're not trying to cook your own goose.
No. If your goose is cooked, that is a very bad sign. We're going to see Ichikawa make another food here. But Anteri, he finds that third land, gets to cast that cultivate already at 5 mana, with a 6th coming down the following turn. So by the time he sticks that Corvold, Lord only knows what Anteri will have been able to deploy by then.
On the bright side, Ichikawa picking up a Woe Strider off the top does mean that there's something that can at least start getting into the red zone here.
It is a 4/4 Hydrocrisis, giving Anteri more cards, also giving Yuki an appealing target for cards like Claim the Firstborn, which we did see him leaving the deck, but that's not what he has at the moment here, although the Noxious Grasp can still trade with it.
Bright side, Corvold, bigger than a 4/4, and likely going to draw more cards than that Hydroid Crisis could dream of.
Yeah, we talk so much about jellyfish fighting against these sharks. How about a Dragon King that's already a 5/5 and poised to get even bigger?
Yeah, that dragon, cursed by Fae, still ready to fight. What is a jellyfish gonna do?
Not much. And Mayhem Devil, off that Corvold draw, can combine with Corvold and those Witches' Ovens to really cook up a stew on Ishikawa's turn.
Yeah, absolutely. I am very, very interested in seeing something like a Cauldron Familiar off the top for Ichikawa.
And Anteri really hoping for another timely Ether Gust draw or a Ugin or some card that can contain the Corvold, which otherwise is going to put this game out of reach pretty quick.
Right. The thing about Corvold is it just turns the corner so quickly. It applies so much pressure. Anything more than, say, one untap step with that card is going to spell doom.
And even a gigantic shark with all of the mana that Anteri can access here is going to be outpaced quickly by the Corvold, which there are a lot of these cards, which you see them right here, Hydro Crazy, Shark Typhoon, they give you color advantage and they're massive threats, and Corvold kind of beats both of them on both axes.
Right, that's one of the most impressive things about Corvold in general, is just the fact that it is able to apply pressure while also being its own engine. That's what you need in a lot of cards these days. Earlier we were talking about the sort of interactive and pressuring cards like Priest of the Forgotten Gods, Bone Crusher Giant, and so on. Corvold serves 2 other roles, but does serve 2 roles for the deck.
And we might see Shark Typhoon and the like just buying time, Chum blocking that Corvold to give Anteri more redraws towards that Ugin that can clean out the board.
That's what I would expect on this battlefield.
There's another land. You can sacrifice. I guess at this point, those Witches Ovens are good for your Corvold.
Right.
You're not putting the dragon in the oven. You're putting the oven in the dragon, I suppose.
Honestly, it's hard to say. He's a very large dragon. I'm not one to guess what he does with his ovens behind closed doors, you know?
I'm sure there's all manner of things in that dragon's belly at the moment. And Corvold already a 7/7, and if he can, he's got the Noxious Grasp to swat the Crazies away. If there's no additional charm blockers, that's quickly becoming a 2-turn or even a 1-turn clock.
Right, that Shark Typhoon normally making what it would be an 8/8 Shark here, if I'm not mistaken. That's just not even going to cut it by next turn. Normally 8/8 Sharks are the biggest kid on the playground, but here it's just inadequate. And it's even possible that Anteri is trying to set up a double block with the Jellyfish and the Shark Typhoon to actually kill that Corvold, and that is not going to work.
It's nice to see Jellyfish and Sharks finally fighting on the same team for a change. And still pondering the next step here for both players. A lot of options for Ichikawa. What do you think his mana is best spent on here?
Most of the thing that it feels like Ichikawa is trying to weigh is what cards he wants to try to play around at this point. There's a blast zone on the battlefield, so you don't really want to commit another Witch's Oven to the table. But on the other hand, you do want to be able to do things if the opponent has an Ugin. When do you want to cast your Noxious Grasp on this jellyfish, etc.?
Yeah, and this priest is helping him to kind of diversify his mana cost here against that blast zone. I'm wondering if it's worth putting that land in for Anteri, who really needs redraws towards Ugin at this point.
Yeah, at this point, I almost feel like this Shark Typhoon might even just be on chumping duty, where rather than trying to set up one of these big double blocks, instead we're going to see Shark Typhoon just make, say, a 3/3 or something to that effect. So it's big enough to survive a Mayhem Devil, but not doing much else.
And it looks like enough cards for Uro, or one of those two Uros, to escape the graveyard here.
Okay. That's a way to get something started.
Towards like an Aethergast or something for the core vault.
Right, and this is actually a great foil to Priest of Forgotten Gods.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you are feeding your cat to something. It's just not an oven this time. Actually, what, is that a cauldron in the Priest art? There's something going on there.
Really? I forgot. That's the whole shtick. Who's to say what that priest is doing?
You see, you're on flavor text duty. You can't be expected to completely remember the art as well.
Yeah, exactly. You get it. So some cards, even if they don't have flavor text, that means just going on to the next one.
We whole department here who lore, just into our earpieces. So we got every aspect of this covered. And yeah, if you're not hoping to double block with the shark and the jellyfish, then the jellyfish can rumble on in.
Right, this is a big sign that Anteri is just planning to chump block with the Shark Typhoon.
And now with the Mayhem Devil, Mayhem Devils plural, is there a way for Ichikawa to get that shark out of the way before it can block?
I think it's tough. It would require a lot of sacrifices. It isn't impossible, but I would be surprised if Anteri does it before some number of sacrifices resolve on their own. Well, that's one way to make a shark not happen.
Yeah. I guess you can make a 0/0 shark.
Do. That's
not even a baby shark. The shark doesn't even exist.
Well, no, I mean, it exists for a moment. Honestly, this is going to get dark. So back to the game.
If you can think about it, it exists. Or so my philosophy degree informed me.
Speaking of existing, how do you feel about a second Mayhem Devil for Reach here?
I do love it, and that's going to team up nicely with that Priest of Forgotten Gods. One of those devils will bite the dust.
Oh!
Gonna shoot down the Joriel. We're gonna. All this happens before the priest activation, and so we shoot down the 2/2 cat and the. And so now one of those two premium threats has to be sacrificed instead. Oh, and Agonizing Remorse as well. No super repeating targets here, but if you want something nice to use your 2 mana on, that fits the bill. You can also not just grasp the Uro.
Right, there's even a point where you may just want to try and fight on the battlefield instead of using Agonizing Remorse. At this point, how good do you think the last card in Fabrizio's hand is?
If there was an Ugin, it would have come down. If there was an Aethergast, it would have tagged your core vault already, or could do it now.
Exactly.
If you're a fan of game actions, this is a stream for you. There's a lot happening in this turn.
And look at this. Anteri's facing lethal now.
And even without the core vault, even if that gets gutted, we are quickly building towards lethal with that Mayhem Devil, with that Priest. We got an Oven and a Goose to follow up with, and the Woe Strider. So a ton going on here. And yeah, I think we're looking at just cycling the Shark, Typhoon, hoping to find something, though I'm not quite sure what at this point.
Yeah, this is a situation where Anteri knows that these sharks are not going to make it to blocks, so you need to make something happen before then.
And Uro coming back, but I don't know if that's going to help.
Well, it does give a little bit of a life buffer and another redraw.
Another school of jellyfish, I believe, is the collective noun here, entering the fray for Anteri.
Really, it just feels like this Simic ramp deck is the Aquaman of the format. It's really uniting the seas against a common threat.
But that dragon is flying over all here, and yeah, we're going to see Mayhem Devil, Priest of Forgotten Gods. We have the fodder for it in Ghost Rider and Golden Goose, so we can keep the devil around, still sacrifice stuff to Priest for maximum value.
And we can see Anteri holding back on that jellyfish, because if you're going to get to do one of them for a large amount the following turn, you want it to be the one that gives you more life and more cards.
Absolutely. So there's Golden Goose. And there's Ghost Rider.
And just sacrificing the goat token to Ghost Rider's ability is going to be enough to get this shark out of the way at the very least.
Yeah, that 1/1 shark awkwardly size here, where a Mayhem Devil trigger can shoot it down, and Uro now is unprotected. We're going to have to burn that second Shark Typhoon to keep Uro around. If that's even the goal, I think at this point we have to just hope to try and block the Corvold, but I don't know if that's going to work out.
Yeah, I think you're just going to have to make a 3/3 Shark.
And there's both a Citadel. Not that it's especially important here, but crucially, claim the Firstborn on your own Priest of Forgotten Gods can clear the way, untapping it to sacrifice 2 creatures and get the Shark Typhoon off the battlefield too.
Right, Claim the Firstborn is one of the cards that secretly has the mode of targeting your own creatures. It also could just steal a shark.
Steal a shark, do.
See, now you're getting it. That is the energy I like to see.
And yeah, there it is. A masterful play from Ichikawa.